All right, so let me see what we got here. I'm still downloading. So I'll go through some the what I have for notes here. And student notes. This is my overview of this chapter, so I'm going to just put it in the student notes now. There's a lot of them. It's a long chapter. It's an important chapter. So if you haven't read it, you need to. Right? And we had gotten to the isolation and social reinforcement, I believe. Yep. So what is social reinforcement? Anyone? Give me some social reinforcement. Even know that somebody's out there. All right. Social reinforcement. All right. Well, I mean, that's just the feeling of community that we get when we're around others, right? And social reinforcement in in level design and gameplay, right, is when you have multiplayer games, right, and the community you build within the games is part of the payoff of the game, right? And temporary isolation, right? Sometimes we play games to connect with other people, right? That's the reason we do it, right? But in other cases, someone who agrees with your ideas, social reinforcement, yes, um, that can be what social reinforcement is. Yes, that's kind of like the confirmation bias we hear so much about. Right? In this case, it's the social reinforcement is because we're in this community of gamers in a game, we feel good about the game itself, right? So it reinforces our feelings for the game because we have these bonds that we made through the game, right? All right, temporary isolation, right? And it has this quote here: "Who hasn't heard the Grimm saying, hell is other people," right? I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm kind of a solitary. I can be kind of solitary person, but I mean, I have good friends, and I like hanging out with friends and stuff too. But there are times when I don't want that, and that's what this is about, right? I think there are always times. All of us have times where we just want to get away from everybody else, right? And there are games, especially like single player games, where their whole selling point is this way of getting away from everybody else, right? Temporary solitude, as we have here, right? Isolation. Single player games give a chance for solitude. Getting away from everyone else. Right? So that's part of the payoff, right? It's part of the reward of playing these games is that we get a chance to get outside of our normal world and even other people. adversity and catharsis, right? How many know have ever heard the word catharsis before, and you're looking at it right now? So, anybody ever hear of catharsis before? It's a really big word. It's an important word, right? Catharsis is literally translated as cleansing, right? A cleansing emotion, right? Usually, right? You see, origin Greek catharsis, to cleanse, right? And it's that overpowering emotion that always when something happens so powerful that you almost, it brings you to tears, right? And you after the fact, after it happens, you feel like you're a different person, right? It's an extremely powerful thing, and they bring it up in terms of gameplay because if you can foster this in gameplay, then you've got something, right? And that's why they bring it up, because if you can figure a way of creating that in a game, then you will have a hit, right? As long as you can get it in people's hands, right? Like page 104, the concept is almost always described as having something of a purging nature, all the way back to Aristotle's early use of the word in his famous Poetics, right? Where he describes catharsis as being one of the main characteristics of tragedy, where it serves as a purgation of pity and fear. Copy that. So you should definitely know the definition of that, right? So the point here is that catharsis is something that you could, if possible, if you can deliver that in your game, you've done something, right? The problem is that it's to get to a cathartic state, you have to go through a great ordeal, right? And if the gameplay is too hard, right, it leads to frustration, and they never get to the cathartic feeling. So there's once again, where there's really a balancing act, right? All right, so let's see. So the concept summary on page 105, right? One of the many things a level designer has to understand is the dynamics of all these reward systems, as well as being able to effectively use them in practical situations in a fair and even-handed way, if possible. The following chapter will attempt to make these concepts of diverse reward systems and examine them in the light of level design theory. Right? All right, so then he goes on, and we're talking about theory, right? So we talk about escapism and wish fulfillment, right? Once again, this book does the concept, theory, and then application. Sometimes it seems disjointed, honestly, but we've already talked about escapism being the desire to get away from things, right? And wish fulfillment is very much the same thing, right? You have these dreams that you would like to have happen, right? And games can let you do that, right? If you want to be Batman or Spider-Man, there are games that let you do exactly that, right? And he talks about these terms fantabulate and simulate, right? Fantabulate's his term. He created it, right? So, and he says a level is a virtual construct, right? It may have its own set of rules, logic, physics, systems, ecology, and other eternal systems, but they all take place in a virtual setting. The disadvantage of this virtuality is somebody needs to design and implement all these things, right? So if you create something that's totally new, that's never existed before, you have to create, it is on you to create all these details of the world, right? And while it's a great burden for you, right, you also have a very great deal of power, right? Um, so it gives you the power to create new rules for the world, right? We're free to create many things or situations that simply would not work in the real world at all with the approval of our audience, right? So that's a very powerful thing, right? He brings up Tolkien, right? Tolkien was a king at this, right? When you read Tolkien, it feels consistent, right? Even though he talks about fantasy things, right? Nothing feels outside of his. It doesn't seem random, right? He doesn't throw things at you randomly. He's created this whole kind of. He's created this world, and you can feel when you read it that even things that you're not reading about, he is fleshed out in his own mind, right? So he's created this ecosystem, if you will, that has a sense of wonder, as it says here. Right? The book creates a very deep sense of wonder because it consistently and thoroughly showcases a new world with an extremely detailed and well thought out set of rules. Right. You can see this because he created the maps, right? I mean, he was one of the first person to do this, right? He created a map and he wrote the world around the map, and he wrote whole histories of people about the book, right? So there's all this backstory. Even if when you read the book, you can, when he introduces a character, you can tell there's weight to the character, even if you don't read everything about the character. Anyway, if you can bring that same sort of thing to a game, obviously you've got something, right? New environments, obviously you get to create new places for people to explore, and that is a huge part of the power as a level designer, right? Let's see. He's saying that, in fantasy games, like on this page 108, right? A big reason for the existence of the levels is to present a gameplay environment and a virtual environment that appeals enough in its own right that the player wishes to engage with it and spend time sampling its content. This means that it's reasonable to include enjoyable areas that don't feature much gameplay. Right? This very much goes into fantasy games where exploring is part of the game. You don't have to inject action into every single space in the map, so to speak. Right? There's reason to have spaces that aren't doing much, because if you create a beautiful environment, people that play that sort of game are just they like to wander around and just explore, right? Let's see, page 108 again. Let's see. In the case of a fantastic setting, level designers should always ask fundamental questions about the scenarios they create. In the case of a fantastic setting, these questions can include: can I reach that strange but beautiful area? How do I study that new dangerous creature? What else can I use this artifact for? Who built this structure? How do I reach that floating fortress? Right. These are just example questions. Obviously, there could be thousands more. Right. But when you're creating levels, that these kind of questions should drive your creation. All right. Simulate. All right. So what does it mean to simulate something? Do it without actually doing it. Yes, that's a fair definition. Yes. Has anybody played a simulation? And what was it? Surgeon Simulator. That's a good one. Any others? Flight Simulator. That's a classic. All right. Of the two, which one's more an accurate simulation of real life? Yes, definitely not Surgeon. I agree, yes. So definitely Flight, right? And I haven't actually played the Flight Simulator, but I'm assuming it's and I'm not nor am I a pilot, right? So not having really played the game or flown a plane, I think they try to make that fairly accurate, if I'm not mistaken. But the point here is that while we call a lot of games these simulations, right, they're not truly simulations. Simulations, in the truest sense of the word, try to emulate real life things as closely as possible, right? But like a war game, right? You play Call of Duty. Right? It's very rapid and very fast paced, and there's always shooting going on. Right? But there's a famous quote. I'm not sure who the quote is, but who said it. But that war is long stretches of boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Right. So if you had an accurate war game, right, a lot of the time would be sitting in a trench or a foxhole or back at your tent, right, waiting for something to happen, right, and nobody would want to play that. So when we say simulation in gameplay, we're usually talking about imitation, right? Gameplay, we usually look to imitate rather than simulate. Anybody play Madden in here? Anybody a Madden fan? When you play, do you play a full 15 minutes per quarter? Yes, see, that's what I'm talking about, right? So you're not fully simulating the football experience, right? Because you're not playing full quarters. That's what we're talking about. It's really an imitation, and you can change that. You can make them as short as you want, really, as far as I know. The last time I played it, it was like that. I mean, you can make them quite short, so that you kind of get a feeling for a game, but you're not constrained to playing 3-hour game, right? Because who wants to sit there? I don't know anybody that plays 3-hour Madden games, but maybe they do. So that's what we're talking about here, right? It's a simulation. It's an imitation, not an actual simulation, right? And because your objective in making a game is make something that's entertaining and enjoyable. And if you over simulate it to the point where it's boring, nobody's going to play. So that's really all you got needed to say right there, right? So if you look on page, 109, right? The simulation results when the equations of the underlying dynamic model are solved. This model is designed to imitate the time evolution of a real system, right? And the time evolution being the principal part, right? When you want to simulate something realistically, the time portion is very important. But when we want to create something that's fun, we like to take out the boring sections and kind of compress the fun into um, a something that's fun sized, right? Um, most games are not like that at all. Games are about enjoyment, and it goes on to say basically what I just said, right? So if we look closer, we find that they aren't games of simulation at all, but games of illusion and imitation. The game imitates real-world activities only to the degree that the fun aspects are replicated for the enjoyment of the player. Right? Actually, only needs to be observed as long as it supports enjoyable gameplay. Yes. And this is for Brian. An actual racing game simulator would be far too difficult for most gamers to enjoy. Would you agree with that? Yeah. But I think you kind of strive for accuracy, or you want this more accurate game, if I'm not mistaken, or I think you told, yeah. Yes. I mean, now if you had a game where you had accurate options for that rare player that wants them, and then you could turn them off for people, then I think that would be smart, right? Yeah, and I think that's what they're shooting for. Yeah, so cool. So accuracy only needs to be observed as long as it supports enjoyable gameplay. An actual racing game simulator would be far too difficult for most gamers to enjoy. So I mean, I think that's a clear point, right? So what is the point? What is the point of playing a Grand Prix sim if the player cannot win? Right? It would be accurate and realistic, but not much fun, especially because it fails at the first hurdle and doesn't provide the wish fulfillment element of the game's reward system. All right. And then he goes on to say that even though the word simulation is suspect, right, he still advises to adhere to it in uses in games, right? Because people just are used to hearing it, right? And imitation has a kind of a negative connotation, right? So he's, and then the next paragraph he said this is not semantic nitpicking, but it kind of is. But semantics can be important, especially when you're marketing things, right? The Sims aren't called M's, right? They're not called the imitations. There's the simulations, right? It's not M City, it's Sim City, and that's because people think of it as a simulation, and it is of sorts, but not a true simulation, right? And we're getting into the marketing side of things, really, when we get into those kind of terms. Let's see. There are times when simulation and imitation go hand in hand, perhaps when a particular sports league is implemented or when the correct dimensions of a vehicle need to be followed. But even in those circumstances, it needs to be clear that these implementations still serve an enjoyable imitation of a real-world activity. And this is important. This has a tremendous impact for the level design of these games. Instead of being at the mercy of real-life rules and physics, the level designer now has the role of illusionist. The tracks in a realistic racing sim now only have to feel like they are correct. As long as they are fun, the job is well done. The lack of accuracy in wildlife photography games terrain means nothing as long as it produces expected results that don't break immersion. It is all smoke and mirrors, right? That's a really important point in all of this, is that as a level designer, you are the person creating that imitation, right? And it is not your intention to create a simulation, right? For the most part. And we'll get into the exception in the very next paragraph, right? Who knows? Who have heard the term? I know you've heard the term serious games because you took 111, right? So, what is a serious game? I know you've heard the term serious game because you read Reality is Broken, right? So, what is a serious game? McGonagall is big into them. Everybody go to the bathroom at once. All right, yes. Usually it is focused on teaching some kind of real world skill or task, right? As it says here, there's no formal definition of what exactly constitutes serious games, right? But the main focus is that of teaching some real world application or education, right? Sometimes it's a commercial thing, right? There are a lot of businesses that try to gamify teaching business practices and that sort of thing. And this is a huge growth area, by the way, if you're interested in it, right? I mean, it's certainly not what most people, when they start their trek towards becoming a game designer, think, hey, I want to go work for, IBM and teach people how to, not sexually harass people or something. I don't know, but create a game about that. But some of these huge businesses have started kind of doing that. So if you can make them decent, right? That's the big thing, right? Most serious games aren't fun. And fun's not really what they're trying to go for. But I have found, right, if you can make them fun, they're more likely to actually educate. So I think I call it stealth education, right? And I think there needs to be more of it. I didn't turn off my notifications. 1 second. Decline. Now turn off them. All right. All right. So serious games are the only place where the simulation might actually be a simulation, right? If you had an actual surgeon simulator, right? Not the silly game that is Surgeon Simulator, but an actual surgeon simulator, then it would be in real time, and things wouldn't slip out of your hands and cut their jugular and blood spurting everywhere. And there are games like that. I wouldn't even call them games, but they're simulations that allow the exploration of anatomy without having a cadaver and that sort of thing, right? So that's pretty amazing stuff. But the mechanics of creating this thing are very much like they would be if you were a game. The game developer can create it, but it's not made necessarily to be enjoyable or fun, right? So that is how they're different. All right. The Serious Games Initiative is focused on uses for games and exploring management and leadership challenges facing the public sector. Part of its overall charter is to help forge productive links between the electronic game industry and projects involving the use of games in education, training, health, and public policy. Like I said, this is a growth area in game development, and it's worth looking into because I would say there's fewer people that are flowing towards that than, Epic and BioWare and EA, right? So there may be more job openings in that kind of course, it's not you're going to be your dream job because you'll be creating something for, IBM or, Burroughs Wellcome or some crap. I don't know. Anyway, it's just an idea for future job possibilities, right? Fantastic simulation, right? So we had Fantabulate, which creates this whole fantasy world, and you pretty much come up with what you want to, but you want everything to be consistent. And then you have simulations that are supposed to be mimicking real world situations, right? But on rare occasions, a hybrid game of form appears that tries to provide fun gameplay through realistically simulating activity in a fantastic setting, or even fantastic activity and inning setting, right? This isn't easy to quantify, but some clear examples exist. Take, for instance, Startopia, a game that expects the player to successfully run a spaceship colony, balancing the needs of all the diverse onboard species. Another example can be found in the famous Tamagotchi brand, where the player is expected to take care of a fantastical creature in a realistic manner. Right, so that's kind of this hybrid thing that you don't find a lot of, but you never know. You might end up making one. Long chapter. Staying in character means that if you create this fantastic simulation, right, the level needs to adhere to whatever guidelines were laid down. The internal rules should stay the same, right? Avoid cliches. It's up to the level designer to decide how to implement these principles and what cliches to avoid. There are no hard and fast rules. And what constitutes a cliche can be entirely dependent on the game's genre or expected audience, right? So if you don't know what a cliche is, look it up. And you should know what a cliche moment is in a game by the fact that you've played a bunch of games, right? All right. We all know what grinding is, right? Investment and payoff. We talked about this. Like I said, he kind of comes back around to these concepts sometimes when he goes to theory and then to the practice and all that sort of thing. But grinding is something that people will do as long as the payoff is big enough, right? It's just well known that grinding is something, and they've come to know that this is something they got to do, right? So, you just have to make sure the payoff is commensurate with how much they have to grind, right? The agreement between designer and player. The player of a video game is happy to face the challenges the game offers if there are rewards for doing so. So it's important to get the balance right. So that's important. Proportional rewards, I already said, payoff should be equal to the grind, right? Avoid boredom if possible. That should seem obvious. He goes into more detail. By all means, read all this, right? Avoid frustration, right? Frustrated player will stop playing your game, right? These are the players who will probably never play your game again, and they will tell others to not buy it, right? So you do not want to avoid to frustrate your player. All right. Let's see. Submission and release and level design, right? Trust in the machine. You want your levels to be consistent and fair so that the player trusts that it's going to be fair, right? If they lose that trust, then we're back to that frustration part, and that's a problem. Overt and covert submission. Sometimes this submission is overt, and it's the tutorial needs to teach rather than punish, and collecting all 100 gems of infinity needs to really pay off, right? It's obvious that they have submitted to this system, right? That's overt. And covert means it's kind of underhanded, right? Let's see. All right. Empowering the player. Right. Let's see. I'm going to... Let's get that tired. Shaping the world. Rigging the game. There it is. All right. Rigging the game, right? That's kind of important. It sounds bad, right? Because we heard a lot about rigging just recently, right? And nothing was rigged. There are times when you want to rig the game there. Especially single-player games, you want to make sure that the player avoids frustration, as we said before. Let's see. So as level designers, we can tailor the player's challenges, and we can have much to say over their ability to deal with them. In most cases, we can and should make sure that the fix is in and that the game is slightly rigged in favor of the player. The player finds just the right keys to open just the right doors. The player has just enough training to be able to just win the tennis tournament. The ambush area features just enough cover for the player to make a fighting escape. Often we can engineer these moments in such a way that the player makes the key decisions or is tricked into thinking so, thus deepening the sense of empowerment. So rigging the game, especially in single player games, is a very useful strategy. Right? Keeping it fair, that's why people play games generally, is because they feel like life isn't fair and games will give them a fair shot at winning something. Right? Allowing the player to cheat. There are games that allow cheat codes. Usually these aren't multiplayer games. Single player games, if you can, if it's not a hardcore game, allowing ways for them to make progress without, too much trouble is a, and there's different ways of doing this, right? There you can have different levels of difficulty, right? And if they get to a level, I've done this actually in StarCraft. Like you get to these final levels and they're really hard at the normal, and you bump them down to casual so you can get through it. Because you want to see how the story evolves, right? And some people just want to see that, right? They want to play through the story mode and see how the story evolves, and allowing them a way of getting past it and seeing the story is helpful, right? So having ways to do that is important. All right, social dynamics and level design. There are multiplayer aspects to level design, and read through this. I'm skipping through this because we still have 15 more pages in this chapter, believe it or not. Single player aspects, right? NPCs are a huge thing in level design. I'm going to go into great detail right here, but especially role-playing games, having NPCs are a huge element. Right? Back to Catharsis again. Let's see. Including the audience. And just because I'm glossing over this doesn't mean you shouldn't read it, but there's just a lot there. And I've already been rambling on for about 50 minutes. So, suspense, catharsis, and level design. Exceptional challenge, right? You need an exceptional challenge to bring forth the catharsis. There has to be some really hard challenge to get over, right? All right. And catharsis release here again, right? All right. Well, that's all I'm gonna ramble on about that. All right, so read over that before you do the forum, right? And think about reward systems and feedback systems that you have experienced in your gameplay experience, right? And also, what can we add to our game, to our time to run our game, as far as reward systems go. All right. Now, let's see. Are these downloaded? Let's check. All right. All right, so that looks good. That's weird, man. Y'all see that? Is there a lag? Is there a lag at all? There's, all right. See, I just tried to import Blaine's and it says nothing to import. All assets from this package are already in your project. Let's try another one. Katie sent hers. So that's this. Okay, so that one. I thought it was the one I just downloaded. So let me. Um, so do you see what I'm looking at right now? Which one should I be downloading? Okay, well, I thought I downloaded that one. Let me first import hers here real quick. Okay, wow. Okay, she. I think she exported everything. But you see how much is there, right? It shouldn't overwrite things. I hope not. So we're about to find out. All right. So I want to import all this and see what happens. Hopefully it won't blow something up. But remember when I clicked on the level and I said to select dependencies, right? And then then when you create the export, I said don't include dependencies. I think was the case, and it doesn't include everything if you do it that way. But we're about to see how this works. All right. No, it's no. I mean, we're all trying to figure this out together, so it's not a big deal. But so that was because this was the zip here, right? And so that's what happened. This is what it looks like if you just zip up the package. This is what it looks like when you unzip it. I'll show that again actually. So this is the zip that I originally got from you, and I unzipped it, and let's see. It's still important to Katie, so we'll see how long it takes. We'll go through the process again here in a minute because I don't know how well this is going to work. All right. So this just unzipped this folder, right? Oh, yes. This was this is the one that I just renamed. I see. Yep. All right. So I think we're good now. Let's see if she's done over here. Yeah. All right. Oh wow. All right. So we'll see what happens here. Let's just see if her scene opens. Right. So where is it? Oh, was it? Oh, that's another thing. You want to when we do this, don't label it sample scene, because that's going to be a problem. Yep. All right, so yeah, you want to label your scene. Okay, so is that it? It's in there. That's cool. Galaxy metal is missing. So I don't know if that's going to cause a problem. Let's just see if it'll run. If it runs, then we're doing all right, I think. Whoa. Ah. Okay. Is there a jump? What is the jump? Jump there. All right. Yeah, see, I have zero game, man. All right. I got you. I don't know if I'm going the right way or not. Holy crap. Which level is this? All right. It does look good. It looks really good. All right. Well, I suck, basically. So that's cool. I don't really. What's. You said the textures were missing? So I don't. Yeah, because I don't see them missing here, oddly enough. I mean, everything looks pretty good. Interesting. So I'm going to change this to KD. So I know. All right. Reload. All right. So what else we got? So let's see if Blaine's loads now. Yeah, this might take a while. Oh, so it's level 5. Well, that makes more sense. Is that the final level? Okay. Gotcha. All right. Oh, nice. That means I'm not going to make it. I suck at this kind of game, man. So I will fail over and over again. Watch. All right. But yes, I want y'all to. Hopefully, these all open up. But I will test them. I will let y'all know if I have issues. I mean, this one works. I mean, I think exporting them with not everything might be better, but you know. But we'll see. One thing, just as a purely kind of optimization sort of thing, because there's trees around this whole level, right? But I don't see the level. You know, there's not actual platforms around the whole level. Um, I would suggest not putting trees if they're not going to be seen by the player. I would suggest not putting trees there. It's more to load on the system, and you know, putting stuff in there that is never going to be seen by the player just doesn't make sense. But I mean, I understand you're creating this, and maybe it is seen by the player in the distance. I don't know, but that's kind of an optimization tip, and just kind of a general rule of thumb. Is it okay if I make? Level of detail. LED, you mean? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, that's cool. So I'm still importing lanes, I think. So let's see. Okay, to remake mine a bit because it's not good and I can't get some things to work properly. Yeah, this is all a work in progress. So Emma, if you want to remake it, that's fine. Are you saying you don't want me to show yours off today? Is that your point? Please don't. All right, then I shan't. Um, does anybody else feel that way? Oh yeah. Then I won't show yours during class. I'll because I don't making a backup will take a while, and yeah. And so yeah. Also, I guess Blaine's and Charles wants to touch his up as well. So I guess it's just this one, and then I'll do the other ones offline, and I'll let you know if they open correctly or not. So if they work. So but um, so your scripts are just different at this point, Brian. Is that what you're saying? Is that script in? Is that well? That script's in your scene, I assume. Um. Okay. Send me the script separately. Like I think you have a folder or something for just your scripts. Put it in there, and that way, before I import your level, I'm going to try to incorporate your stuff into my game manager so that it works. All right. I'll try. Oh Lord. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Share your game manager with me as well. If you, I mean, you can email it or what, however. And I'll try to incorporate everybody's changes into one, and maybe try to figure out a saner way of doing this. But anyway, but yeah, because in the end, all the game managers, there should be one game manager script to rule them all, so to speak. So I'll try to bring them all together, as well as create the key for the door thing, which I promised to do, which I haven't done. So, their universal character controller yet. I thought we already decided on one. Um, but if not, then we will do that. Let me. All right, need universal character controller. Need manager and need key script. All right. So Maya. All right. So that's a sample scene. Is that right, Blaine? Is your sample scene as well? Oh, where? Oh, there it is. It's just in the assets. You didn't have it in the scenes folder, I guess. All right. Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe I don't know. That's weird. All right. So looks good. Let's see. Is it playing? Oh, what's wrong? Oh, there's a. All right, there's some conflicts here. I'll have to figure out. Probably yeah. So you had a game manager. You had a game manager script in there, and you already and you changed things. Yeah, there's some conflicts I have to work out. I think it has to do with the game manager, because it looks like they're all well. There's an end zone too. Did you modify the end zone script? Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I'll have to look that over and see what I can do to get that back into compliance, so to speak. But that's cool. I mean, it looks cool from what I can tell, but I can't run it. But we'll see what I can do about that. Definitely. Okay. That's cool. It looks cool. I wish I could play it, but I'll figure out these issues and try to get back to that. Um, let's see. I want to make sure my speed is set to the characters of the rest of the levels. Okay. Yeah, we have to get these. We have to get these levels so that everybody can play them, so that we can test that. But yeah, I mean, is everybody using the basic same character controller, or is anybody using something radically different? I thought we decided we were all going to go with the. Where is it? Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, I think we're all using the same basic character controller. Yeah, if we could just y'all hit each other up on Discord and kind of agree on a standard speed. Um, I think that's important because if he's running different speeds, different levels, it's not consistent. Um, I used the one with package, but it's so slow, so I bumped it to 10 when I started. Right. All right, so um, if y'all want to, I'll try it at 10. I don't know what. Um, yes, and it's possible. It's very. I'll take the blame on that. I should have dictated a standard speed maybe at the beginning, right? 8. Okay. Can everybody try 8? Let's see if that. All right. Let's say 8, right? And if you need to edit, yes. I mean that's my point about the speed being. We should have dictated that earlier. Is it will change your levels, right? Because if you're jumping, how fast you're jumping will dictate where those platforms have to be. So, but this is part of game design too, and level design because the game designers can break your levels because they might change their mind, right? And then you don't make your ship date by Thanksgiving, right? So hey, it's a tough lesson, I guess. But I should have dictated what the speed was going to be, I guess, or we should have decided that earlier on. But here we are, right? So hopefully it won't break your levels too much, and you can modify them as necessary. But hey, it's level design practice, and that's what we're here for. So, all right. So really, your main thing is to make sure you read chapter 7. Like I said, it's a long one, but it is an important one. And do that forum post, and then try to import these and play your your classmates' levels, right? And I'm going to try to fix the game manager script. What you might do is just open up so you don't screw up your copy of this. Create an empty Unity project and import your classmates' stuff into that, so you can just play through them without breaking your other game, right? Because if you haven't modified the game manager yet, it's not going to work, right? So I would suggest creating just a test bed project for these levels for now until I can make a game manager to rule them all. That makes sense. Alrighty. Any questions? Well, what I see so far looks really good. I'm looking forward to seeing, the ones I haven't seen, Emma's and Charles, and I guess Brian's I didn't see either. But have I seen you? I think I've seen Brian's. I don't remember, but yes. So I think it's looking pretty cool. If we gotta hammer out these small little details here, and I think we can actually create something that's playable maybe by the end of the semester. So we got like 4 weeks. So hard to believe 4 or 5, but 4 really, because the last week is kind of the wrapping it up. But let's see. I can stop sharing now, I guess. All right. Any final questions? All right. If there are no questions, then you are free to go, and I will be logging out shortly. Thank you all, and I guess I'll see some of you tomorrow morning. I will be logging on tomorrow morning, unlike last week. So if you're there, I'll see you. If not, then it'll be next week, I guess. All right. Oh yeah, that's true. I'll log on probably, but if you're not here, then you're not here. Right? All right. So if you have questions, then show up. If not, we're cool. All right.